And now on Sydney Weekend, cheers with Ben Malouf. Thanks to firstvintage.com.au.
Now, Ben Malouf's on the line. He's enjoying overseas, travelling, and he's enjoying many of the great red and white wines they have to offer. Ben, good afternoon. Where are you?
Good afternoon, Dan. I'm here in the city that never sleeps. Beautiful downtown New York.
Oh, well done. Just off the cuff. Who makes better wine, Australia or the US?
I'm almost offended that you asked that question, Dan. Of course it's Australia, hands down. Really? And that's not just me being patriotic. I've travelled to some of the great wine-growing regions over here, so the Napa Valley, the Sonoma Valley, and what becomes evident pretty quickly is that the property and the prices in those areas is really quite expensive. So the American wines aren't necessarily bad wines that are being made, but if it's costing you more to produce the wines, then you've got to charge your customers more.
Yeah.
So in Australia, what you get is these fabulous wines that aren't as expensive. And to be brutally honest, there's no wine varieties that I've come across here in America that we can't grow just as well at a cheaper price in Australia.
Okay, so choose Australian wines. That's what we keep saying every week anyway.
All day, every day, Dan.
Yeah. What's doing when a waiter pours that small amount of wine when you order it at a restaurant and they say, aren't you going to taste it?
I heard you get confused. I heard you mention this earlier on. Now, you remember a couple of weeks ago we talked about the fact that when wines are under cork, 1 in 12 wines had a slight taint to it, so it was slightly off because it had been oxidised. Traditionally, what you're doing when you get that small little pour in your glass is that you're trying to find out whether the wine has been oxidised and is accordingly off, because if it is off, you could send it back. These days, most wines in Australia are under screw caps. So, personally, I'll let you in on a little secret. I generally don't even try it when it's under screw cap because the chances of it being off are so negligible that if it is off, go buy yourself a lottery ticket.
Because I always think if it's off, you're going to know at the first sip anyway.
Yeah, look, you are. And it's part of the airs and graces of enjoying a really good bottle of wine. I mean, that's the opening of the cork. It's the whole mystique of swirling it in your glass. You have a little sniff. Yeah, it's all part of the theatre and the history of enjoying wine as well. But you're right. Look, 9 times out of 10, you smell it on the nose. It smells a little bit vinegary. You know it's going to be off. You'd send the bottle back. But these days, particularly in Australia when they're under Stelvin or under screw cap, there's really not that much reason to actually trial those wines. But if it is under cork, still give it a go because there is a 1 in 12 chance that it might still be off.
You said Stelvin. You mentioned that last week. Is that the name for the screw top now, Stelvin?
That's the actual name of it. So, yeah, they're actually called Stelvins, but, yeah, they're more commonly referred to as the screw caps.
Where does the term Stelvin come from?
Dan, you've caught me. That one's just off notice.
Okay, righto. Next week, you've got a bit of homework.
Absolutely. I'll research it. I'll find out exactly where that comes from. We'll have a bit of a discussion about it, but it's a fabulous invention because I think the corkage rate under Stelvin is something like 1 in 200,000. Don't quote me on it, but it's something ridiculously small.
Okay.
So whereas you've gone from 1 in 12 being slightly off to 1 in 200,000 being off. It was a huge advancement in the wine industry.
We love it. An email from Guy this week. He says, what does reserve mean on the bottle?
Yeah, look, reserve, traditionally where reserve came from, is what winemakers used to do was they used to put aside or reserve some of the best quality wines for themselves. And that sort of has permeated through to the modern day because reserve will generally refer to something that is of slightly higher quality, it is slightly premium for any one of a number of reasons. So, for example, if you have a wine label that has a standard bottle of Shiraz, they may also have a reserve bottle of Shiraz that has had the grapes, I don't know, hand-picked, or what they call basket-pressed. And it's just, made with that little bit extra TLC, meaning that the quality of the product at the other end is just that little bit nicer. So reserve generally refers to a product that's of a slightly higher quality.
A little taste of New York's finest just drifting behind you there. A great sound effect, Benny. Now, if you're going to serve a dry wine and a sweet wine, should one follow another? Should you always follow sweet with dry or dry with sweet? Or is there a sort of protocol here?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, you should always go from dry to sweet. your tongue is a really sensitive sort of thing, and it's very, very receptive to flavours. So you think about it. If you had a cup of tea and a bowl of ice cream, you wouldn't have your ice cream first, because then when you tasted your tea, the tea would taste all funny. But if you did it the other way around, it wouldn't. You'd get the full flavours and the full aromas of what you were trying to taste. Your tongue actually acclimatises to sugar levels. So once it's saturated with all that sort of sweet stuff, everything else afterwards that's less sweet is going to taste funny, it's going to taste bad. So accordingly, you should always go from the dry stuff all the way along to the sweet stuff.
Okay, and just on sweet wine, a question from Dan here in Pyrmont. Why are dessert wines only sold in those little tiny bottles?
It sounds like you're a little bit disappointed, Dan. I think you might like
That's exactly right.
Bigger bottle. Maybe a 1.5 litre for you. We can organise that one next week.
I love a glass of sticky at the end of a meal. I love it. Why are they only little bottles?
You just nailed it right on the head. You love a glass of sticky. You're probably not going to sit down and have 4 or 5 glasses of sticky in the same way as you might sit down and have, say, 4 or 5 glasses of Shiraz with your dinner. So, to be honest, it's a function of practicality. You're not sitting down, you're not going to be producing, you don't need to produce the wines in as large a quantity, to be quite frank. And accordingly, put them in smaller bottles and you just enjoy them as a nice little snifter after dinner.
Good stuff. Now, the best part of this week's segment is you're announcing a very special offer for my listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan, look, it's been so fabulous over the last 7 or 8 weeks, and we've had so much support from everybody, emails, telephone calls. So what we thought is that we should give every one of your listeners, a $50 gift to spend on any of our mixed or mixed cases of wine at firstvintage.com.au. So all they've got to do is go to the website, select a case of red or a case of white or a mixed case of great award-winning Australian wines, and at checkout, put in the promotional code 2GB, and of course, we'd ship it out to them free of charge as well.
First Vintage.
Thanks to everybody.
Firstvintage.com.au, and as you buy yourself a dozen wines there, and they're all Australian wines and they're all Australian award-winning wines, when you get to checkout, you get a $50 discount.
Absolutely, just whack in the promotional code 2GB.
And free delivery.
Free delivery, anywhere in Australia.
Will you get it there to them before Christmas?
Oh, absolutely. I reckon we'll have it there within the week, Dan.
Good on you. Okay, Ben, thank you so much for that. That's a very kind offer. Firstvintage.com.au. That's where you should get your grog this Christmas.